the superstars of motor rallying, Colin McRae from Scotland and Juha Kankinen, who's made this event his own. They're at start point now, gentlemen. Take us through the first thing.
So the 4 times World Rally champion in car number 1. He gets away much better this time than he did last night when he did a 1:39. He's still developing along with his team from Europe. This is a Finn in a Japanese car locking up and in a car registered in Germany. But it's not as competitive as it will later be. But this man is a master. And young Colin McRae in the blue Subaru there, heading to the flyover as Kankinen gets on the brakes now. And he's got the car all cocked up, as you can see, ready to go left. As across the top there flew Colin McRae, the man that won the last World Rally Championship round in New Zealand. He's very quick, but he has been a bit error-prone, and indeed that's what happened on the last day here last year. So he bursts out onto Riverside Drive. So too does Kankinen, really sideways in the new Celica, making its debut in World Championship rallying. This isn't a World Championship round except for the Formula 2 cars, but it's a development program for Team Castrol in Europe, and Toyota Team Europe. And now let's see how they go when Kankinen goes over the top, and he's made ground there, and they should be fairly tight and close together. McRae last night, the fastest man around this stage. Last year, Kankinen set the record at 1:35. McRae last night, 1:37. Kankinen, 1:39.
The drag to the finish coming up now.
And obviously Kankinen this time the quickest of them. And yes, I call it 1:36 as well. So a second faster than McRae was last night. 3 seconds faster than Kankinen was. Times yet to be confirmed. And certainly they're quicker than Colin McRae. So what that means is that he's taken time back of the 12 seconds deficit that he has after 5 special stages. Juha Kankinen, who's dominated Rally Australia and won 4 times, has pulled back probably a couple of seconds.
Well, we've seen 2 of the superstars go around. Let's have a look at the course diagram then. 2.33 kilometres. Peter, where it take us through what these drivers are facing?
Well, the trick here is getting, as we've just done, off the bitumen onto the gravel. And in fact, it's a bit deceptive at times when you look at the cars relative to one another, because you can't actually tell who's in front practically until they come back onto the bitumen, which they're doing now for the drag to the finish line. That's the way it works. 2 cars at a time.
OK, our man at start control point is the second pair about to move off now this afternoon. John Thompson, good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, Peter. We've got the essence of the Asia-Pacific Championship here, as well as being 3rd and 4th. On this side, we've got Possum Bourne, the Kiwi who had so much trouble in last year's Rally Australia. 3 seconds behind Juha Kankinen, 1 second in front of his rival, Kenneth Ericsson from Sweden, in the Mitsubishi Lancer on the outside of the track. This should be a great battle between these 2 pair who are battling out for the Asia-Pacific Championship this year.
So Kenneth Ericsson, the man coming back here for the first time since 91. Staffan Parmander for Team Rally Art Mitsubishi. And Richard Burns, the young British driver. He's won every championship that he's entered. He's the reigning British champion, and he's only 23 years of age. And a great emerging talent, Robert Reid, his regular co-driver. And this is a big Subaru Onslaught on Telecom Rally Australia. Yet to win it. 2 World Championship rally wins to their credit, both to Colin McRae, both of them in New Zealand last year in this. But Richard Burns, a man who I think could present some threat to Colin McRae as lead driver in the team, although that's a dubious statement too, because Carlos Sainz, who's not here, but World Rally Champion, is probably their lead driver, although perhaps the way Colin McRae goes these days, when he keeps it on the island, as he starts to draw level now, even although he has to brake first, you see them setting the car up, turning one way, then throwing it the other. Not a road racing technique, but a rally technique to get the nose pointed in and the tail round and have them firing out of the corner, aiming in the right direction. And you can see there that it's Ericsson that had his car pointed well. Now he's turning off to the left as he sets it to turn right, and then crossed up in the air is young Burns from Britain.
Very, very wide, Ericsson, and may have got him after second or low.
And let's get aboard. 2-litre, 4-wheel drive, turbocharged, 6-speed gearbox. across with an enormous amount of modification and sophistication. Very good there off the bitumen.
And you'd have to reckon that Burns was in front, wouldn't you? Sitting there at home watching this, but that's not necessarily so, because this is where it starts to get serious right now.
See the front wheels turned in tightly there as he understeered. He wanted the tail out. He finally got it out and then was oversteering in the latter part of the corner. Gets in under the tunnel now, and he's got to be very quick from here on, as Ericsson, I reckon's made some time. Ericsson was very tight and tidy there, and you see swinging the front one way and another. The front's getting the apex, the rear's going for a big swing, like something in a kid's playground. And Ericsson indeed is in front. They're very crossed up on Riverside Drive as they burst off down the bitumen, race to the finishing line, and a great recovery run there by Ericsson, probably in a time of about 1:39. And then Richard Burns coming in a little bit slower in behind him. As you can see, they're in something like 5th gear. I don't think they're getting into 6th down there, but certainly stretching up towards 200 kilometres an hour. So it's a bit of a job to get the cars stopped by the time they finish off there.
One of the local favourites, Ross Duncan, about to contest this next little match-up with Peter Possum-Bourne. And let's go back to John Thompson at start control point.
Ross Duncan with all sorts of trouble this morning. He's had 2 punctures, back in 34th place out on the outside of the track. And of course, New Zealand's Possum-Bourne on the inside. Ross Duncan, a local hero in Western Australia, and one the crowd really loves to watch. But he's going to have his work cut out for him, trying to claw back into the top rung of leaders here in Rally Australia. Possum-Bourne, though, he's really firing in 3rd place outright and just 3 seconds behind Juha Kankkunen, 1 second ahead of his rival in the Asia-Pacific Series, Kenneth Ericsson of Sweden, also in a Mitsubishi Lancer, just the same as his rival here, Ross Duncan.
Pete, he's a hometown hero, Ross Duncan.
He sure is. People may be interested to know how it could be that somebody who's currently 34th can be competing right up here with Possum-Bourne, who's technically 3rd outright, but the fact is they have not yet been reclassified, which happens after 10% of the rally has taken place, and that will put them into their relative positions then. So right at the moment they're running off their positions as they are noted on the program, which is why we get Ross Duncan and Possum-Bourne together now. And taking a bit of time here, having a bit of a look around. Ross is having a rest.
So another Mitsubishi Subaru face-off, but this is for entertainment value in the sense of the 2 of them running together. It doesn't matter who beats who. What matters is what you add to your time for this special stage 6 of 30 special stages. For the rest of the rally, they do nearly 600 kilometres of special stages in 1,850 odd kilometres of travel overall. Now, all the rest of that travel time just has to be met within a gentle and very legal schedule as they get away now. Possum-Bourne on the right side, closest to bottom of camera. Dunkerton on the outside. He'll go deep under brakes. He's got further to go on the bitumen. For Possum-Bourne, this is an enormous mental test as well as a physical one. His co-driver, Dr. Roger Freeth, killed in this event last year when Possum-Bourne was driving. But Bourne's bounced back, and Freeth's widow has spoken to him and said, get into it. Stop mucking around, get on with your life. You're a professional rally driver. Duncan, on the other hand, 48 years old.
In last night's match-up, Pete, we saw these 2 guys go around together, and it was Bourne who took the honours over Duncan, who struck some problems.
Well, that may be the case again now too, because in fact Bourne has at this point got a fairly clear lead, but don't forget, once again, this is misleading. This second drag down the straight doesn't actually tell you where they are. The moment you'll know, believe me.
Very crossed up past the tree that Brett Middleton hit in his Daihatsu Charade last night, effectively ending his rally within a few hundred metres of starting it. And Peter Guest, unfortunately, rolled over this morning, one of the emerging young Australian talents. As we look at Possum-Bourne, underneath, going very well against Ross Dunkerton, who jumps over the top a little bit later. Now, he's ahead, Dunkerton here, but he's got much further to travel round this long outside bottom loop. In tight is Bourne from New Zealand.
And it's Bourne who comes out in front on the drag to the finish, all crossed up and really giving it to it.
And it is a drag race now down to the finish with Bourne just getting there ahead of Ross Dunkerton, but possibly doing it on the same second. All of this timed at the nearest second. It's not to tenths or hundredths of a second. All rallying, whether it's out in the forest or here around this super special stage at Langley Park, timed at the nearest second. And so drivers, on occasions, beaten by a length or two or three, can have the same time.
Last night, the special stage, which opened the rally, massive crowd here, about 18, 20,000. This afternoon, not so many this afternoon, though, but still a healthy crowd. And this is one of 3 occasions where they tackle the super stage here at Langley Park. Our next pairing.
Yes, have a look at it. Pavel Sabira from the Czech Republic for Skoda Motorsport. Now, not only is this a 1.3 litre car, but believe it or not, it's running on carburetors. Yet it's lying 20th outright. It's a remarkable effort by one of the smallest engine cars in the event. And have a look at that result down the bottom with a car like that, 10th overall in the Acropolis Rally in Greece earlier this year. A remarkable effort, an enormous effort by Skoda in this country. And as we look at them, we get the official times, which shows us that the fastest time was Kankkunen at 1:37, the official time. So the same time as McRae set last night, and both of them now 2 seconds outside Kankkunen's record. Having a look at Gregoire de Mévius. Now, he's twice been Group N champion. He's a Group N specialist of driving less modified vehicles, and in this instance using an Opel Astra GSI, so it's 2-wheel drive. And he is a very good specialist driver. Never won a World Rally Championship event because he's in Group N, not the hot, highly modified, big budget Group A. But boy, he can get around smartly.
His second visit to Australia, he was here in 1990.
And he is lying 8th in the event so far. He's actually in a Group A car now, but he's running in the 2-litre class, so he's in this new.
Down here on the start line, Pavel Sabira, and as they turn into Langley Park, it'll be Gregoire de Mévius heading onto the dirt first.
And once again, head battle here, Pete. We should point out too to our viewers around the country, although they're going head-to-head, it's not a race amongst drivers, but a race against the clock.
Yes, exactly right. This is why, in fact, you would have to say that these 2 cars technically look as if they couldn't possibly be competitive with one another, and they're not. And they're not meant to be. What they're doing is racing the clock.
Exactly. They're not meant to be. They're going off in the way they're paired in the event, not necessarily the way they should be around here. So that, as you say, cars which sometimes are quite different in potential performance are paired together, but it's the time that they register that's important to them.
And yet, despite all that, we sometimes see some incredibly close racing.
Yes, that's right. Well, of course, you do get classes paired together and cars paired together, like Colin McRae, Juha Kankkunen, and a little Skoda in the background there, really straining its 1.3 litre engine. And as I said, no benefit of fuel injection, merely carburettor, but a very reliable car, funnily. People might think that a Skoda mightn't be, but very reliable and durable, and now leading its class in the World Championship. So it's been a remarkable performance. Look at it, not fast enough to get airborne over the top, but lying 20th outright. Sabira, his co-driver Gross, knows what to do in the motor car, gets his apexes right, and has got it wound up in hot pursuit, as hot as he can make it, of Gregoire de Mévius from Belgium. Lone Belgian driver in the lone GM vehicle from Europe, who goes through in a time of 1:50.
And in fact is currently lying 9th outright in the event so far.
How demanding is this stage in comparison to the 4 days of racing?
So we've got for you now cars 9 and 10.
Relatively easy, actually. It gets harder, not easier.
Yeah, this is doesn't have nearly as many factors in it as flying around in the forest, uphill, down dale, round blind corners, on ball-bearing type surfaces, trees close to the edge, rocks thrown up by cars that go in ahead of you, and so on. So this is more akin to road racing, and most of these guys are not so mad keen on road racing. They like the variability of rallying. But let's have a look at the people that are in this runoff pairing here in Langley Park Super Special Stage. And Emil Triner, again, Czech Republic, again, Skoda Motorsport team, 33 years old. As you can see, been rallying for 11 years, been in 13 World Rally Championship events, and not only a first in class, but an 11th overall. Amazing. And in fact, earlier this year too, 9th and 10th for the Skoda team in the Acropolis Rally. Of those last two to run off, it was Sabira at 1:55 and Demevius at 1:50, the official times. Now looking at the other times, car 1, Kankinen 1:37, car 2, Colin McRae 1:38, a second slower than he was last night, and third fastest so far, 1:39 to Ericsson in the Mitsubishi, number 3, and then 1:40s. As they were locked together last night, Richard Burns in car 4, Ross Dunkerton in car 5, and Possum Bourne in car 6. So they're really tight. 6 cars separated by 3 seconds.
10 seconds to go, 5 seconds to go down on the start line, and the little Honda Civic, the Chinese-entered Honda Civic from British driver Robbie Head, gets the jump on the Emil Trainer, works Opel Favourite, I should say, as they head on down Riverside Drive. The little Favourite actually won this battle last night, I believe, and the Honda Civic, I believe, had a great big lock-up heading into Langley Park, but not this time.
He just threw off a bit of something or other from underneath the car. It looked like a bit of insulation or whatever, and that went flinging down Riverside Drive, adjacent to the Swan River here in Perth, just down from the city. But at the moment, as it should be, the Honda Civic doing the better of the pair.
Yeah, inevitably. It's a quicker motor car, and it did in fact have a bit of a drama last night with a huge lock-up, which meant grabbing reverse gear for a moment. If you've got to go backwards in one of these events, you're losing far too much time. Just missing a corner is enough, and there's a few people who've done that already last night and today, which is caused the retirement of 2 motor cars that I know of.
Probably one of the things they like least is, there's a bit of heavy braking that was very nearly a lock-up for the Honda. One of the things they like least is all that waiting to do 2.33 kilometres to try and pull out a hot time, and then to put the cars away again for the night. It produces an enormous amount of nervous tension that's repeated the next morning, with almost none of the rally really underway. One section, but only 2.33 kilometres at nearly 600 competitive. Trainer doing a good job with the 1.3 litre Skoda. Really flinging it around, and he's got a good handle on it. He's got the long way to go here, and typical front-wheel drive understeer, but gets it pretty straight and pointed pretty well as he comes onto the bitumen. He's made up some good ground on the Honda Civic. Won't be enough, though, as they dash to the finishing line, probably 3 seconds in it.
And a chance now for us to turn off the engines, only for a moment, though. We'll take a break. You're watching the Rally Australia, the Telecom Rally. Back at Langley Park for the rally, and we've got an all-Aussie affair here underway. Ed Orinsky and Neil Bates.
Indeed, last night the times were put round the wrong way, showing Ordinsky is faster, but in the Group N car there's no way he should have been, and indeed he wasn't. Bates now already in a good little lead, using the Celica quite well, except that he goes too wide, but he's got four-wheel drive. He punch out of there very well. Ordinsky, of course, has the same, but in a Group N car doesn't have the power to recover from something like that quite so well and so quickly.
No, but it's a nice piece of driving nevertheless. You shouldn't get that wide, but if you do, you've got to recover, and you've got to recover very quickly, and Bates has done that.
What it is about this track is that it actually is very hard packed and very firm on the track. Right at the edge, though, it's a little bit crumbly.
Yeah, I took a walk around it, actually. It's as hard as a rock, but you step off the edge and it's quite soft sand. Here's Bates. Back on the dirt.
Now, on the outside part of the corner where he ran wide previously, it actually ended up pointing him out of the corner quite well, and with the turbo and more than 300 horsepower, probably 350, 360, something like that. The factory cars, possibly 400. They whisper that because allegedly they've only got 300. And in their specifications, they're all stated as 300 or 299. But these days, it's thought and conceded they're probably somewhere around 400 horsepower. Here's Neil Bates, his navigator, and he's the Australian champion. Coral Taylor is the Australian champion navigator, and with him today, and doing a very good job in a car that he prepares himself. at his Canberra premises.
Exactly a second faster than he was last night. 142 last night, 141 today.
So, good effort by Neil Bates and Coral Taylor. This is vital to his Australian Rally Championship aspirations, where Peter Guest had been leading him, had gone to the lead. And let's have a look at how this happened. Look at Bates. Too wide, but he stayed into it. He just hung on with lock and power and drove it out. Never got off it. And aggression there was responded to by the car. Bates is in a good position now because in the Australian Rally Championship he's trying to pull back points on Peter Guest. Peter Guest rolled his Mitsubishi Lancer earlier, and look at that.
They're not competing though, Will.
Just metres from where we are here at Langley Park. And I don't know if they're expecting, like Monaco, somebody who end up in the river, the delightful Swan River here, but here's just some of the crowd too that's enjoying not only this super special stage, the second of 3 times on which they'll tackle it, but all the other entertainment that's going on here, from Roscoe McGlashan's Australian land speed record holding car to the next pair to go off, and all sorts of bands and entertainment and food. Down on the start lines, John Thompson.
We've got Masayoko Kamioka, the reigning Japanese rally champion, in his Group N Subaru Impreza on the outside of the track, and on the inside, Wayne Hoy, the banana farmer from Coffs Harbour, here doing battle in his Mitsubishi Lancer. This should be an interesting battle, although the Group A Mitsubishi Lancer of Wayne Hoy should have the legs on the Group N Subaru, and certainly the Group A car has a substantial lead over Kamioka already.
And last night this matching was actually Michael Guest with Kamioka, and Michael Guest is out of the event already on day 1, sadly. So the positions have changed slightly. Wayne Hoy will contest with Masayo Kamioka. Ready for a start, John?
Yes, they're warming up. 15 seconds to go. There's an intense look on both drivers' faces. 10 seconds to go down here on the start line. Subaru versus Mitsubishi, 5 seconds. Hoy's building the revs up in the Group A car, and with 1 second to go, he blasts off and really blows Kamioka away on the way down Riverside Drive. It'll be interesting to see if Wayne Hoy can maintain the advantage once on the dirt.
Another beautifully turned out car with Falcon sponsorship. They run in production car racing. They run in rallies, and whenever they turn out, those blue and green colours look marvellous, and the car's always beautifully prepared and presented. And Hoy making very good use of it.
That bridge under the Qantas overpass is actually very narrow. You'll see that everybody gets a lot of brake on there and slows down and gets it all nice and tidy, because you wouldn't want to hit the side. It's solid concrete and it'll stop you dead. You've got to be very careful going under there. Very careful.
It's one of the most worrying areas. It's only about a car and a half width, and they like to be very sideways in corners. That's the quick way through in these sorts of cars. But they have to be very conservative there. You see Kamioka in the Mitsubishi. That sounded suspicious, but just a combination of a car thumping over some rough and broken ground, and also a gear change, I suspect, in Hoy's car. Coming to the bridge now. This is the critical moment where we get a measure of how close together they are. You see, he was coming out of the tunnel when over the Qantas flyover flew Kamioka. So Hoy was doing pretty well there, because he's got a slower but shorter run around the inside. He's busy on the outside is Kamioka. So there we see it. Hoy just in the lead as they hit Riverside Drive, this closed bit of access road around the outskirts of Perth. Dash to the finishing line. And Ordinsky in the previous run, 143 to Neil Bates on a 142. Bates would like to have been quicker, more around the Possum-born Ross Dunkerton mark of 140.
If you're wondering what happens to the cars once they finish their little super stage here, they're off to York, which is about 80 kilometres east of Perth. So it's non-stop action for these rally drivers.
Absolutely. They go into service as each pair of cars, or indeed as each car comes through. They hand in a control card, they get the time recorded, they then go out into service, and sticking to a schedule, but a generous one, and one that ensures that they don't have to break any speed limits. And that's how close we are to the city. The Sheraton Hotel there in the background, where the rally is centred, the command centre, the media centre, and many of the competitors, officials and media staying. and they then go through service and then start on the long transport stage up to the next special stage.
You know, Peter Wirrett, that the rally last year was watched by about 160 million viewers around the world. Just think about that. Massive audience.
It says something about what rallying is like around the world, doesn't it? It's a huge sport, and now, well, companies generally invest literally millions in making their motorcars competitive and see the results, the sales.
So there you see this Team Impreza IPF Fujitsubo team car from Japan, and they heading on their way. And as you're saying, Peter Ensel, the next special stage is called Kevs. It's 7.67 kilometres, and it starts at 6 minutes past 1 West Australian time, 6 minutes past 3 Eastern time, and so while these people are doing their run there, and while many competitors will still be going through here, the leaders are off on the next special stage and doing that one.
And they're going to York, and so am I, gentlemen, so I'm going to leave you to it. Will, you can take over for the rest of the hour while I take off up to York and have a look at some rally stages.
As we see Tolly Chalice in 17 and David and Kate Officer, husband and wife, in car number 18, taking off together. David and Kate from Melbourne, Tolly Chalice, a West Australian, and heading down here now in a local contest. So off to the northeast of Perth go the competitors, followed by Peter Wirrett. And don't forget that Channel 10 is doing a 1.5-hour special on Telecom Rally Australia, which will be going to air about the middle of October. Do I remember correctly, Peter Ensel, October 14?
Yeah, not far off. Something to look forward to for the rally fans out there, and that will be a network program as well.
And we'll be showing you all of the special stages and the action and the transport and the service. As we see here, Tolly Chalice doing a good job in the West Deck Racing entry. Rod van der Straten, his co-driver, where David Officer leading the pair as they come into this infield for the second time. It's just a little bit in front, but this is going to be a close, even run. Headed for the tunnel is Chalice. Should be ahead, needs to be ahead now, if he's to get to the finishing line first. Have a look at them. Under the tunnel goes Chalice, over the top, and therefore leading is the Officers. Then he gets a bit sideways and untidy. Does David Officer, winner of the Sydney to Darwin Safari, Australian Rally champion also. Tolly Chalice not as distinguished in his credentials, but a very regular runner over here in Perth, and in fact out onto the bitumen first. So in the latter part of that lap he did very well indeed, and he's holding his lead as they come down to the finishing line. Tolly Chalice from Western Australia, to the pleasure of many locals, ahead of David and Kate Officer. Back to Langley Park's super special stage. Special stage 6 of 30 in Telecom Rally Australia, and Mashima in 19 gets away against the Indonesia rally team of Tony Hardianto in the Subaru Impreza. Both of them Subaru Imprezas indeed. A few of them out of Dave Richards' organisation that runs the 555 team out of Britain in the World Championships. Been selling some cars and building some for Indonesia. Very wide. Lucky there was enough dirt there to cut him back and stop him sliding too wide. Hardianto, because he needed that. He was headed for the fence a little bit too energetically. Number 20 though, coming quickly at this stage. Plenty of enterprise against Mitsuo Mashima. Kevin Gormley, his co-driver from Britain. And these four-wheel drives, you hear them trying a wheel spin, but they're just traction all the way, despite the turbo giving them an enormous amount of kick and boost. And 19's got untidy and lost a lot of ground. Mashima, so that Hardianto looking very good at this stage. The green crunch of the thump as he comes through, going from the bitumen to the dirt. And even though he has to go under the Qantas flyover, weave the needle through it. Ooh, one of the closest to hitting in there. He had it turned in nicely, so nicely. It was too tight. But he showed that you can get out of it again. As he comes down with a shorter distance to go, you can see that he's in front at this stage. So Mashima has got a little bit wide and untidy, and as you can see, second by some distance, by a couple of seconds at least, out onto Riverside Drive. And so the honours in that little runoff goes definitely to the Indonesian pairing of Tony Hardianto and Anthony Sarwono in the Subaru Impreza. So let's have a look and see where the time got lost and who was untidy where. Look at the right of screen, and very busy in the 555 Subaru Impreza was Hardianto, but he held it well, and what's more, he kept the boot into it. Of the Tolly Chalice runoff against the David and Kate Officer combination, it was a 1 second advantage to Chalice, 145 against a 146 for the Officers. As down on the start line is John Thompson with a star in car number 22. And in fact, I'm wrong because he's getting into a car with Peter Werrett, but have a look at this man, Nobuhiro Tajima from Japan, 44 years old. This man held that awesome Pikes Peak hill climb record, outright record, the one set by Ari Vartman. You remember all the TV footage of that spectacular drive up to about 12,000 feet at Pikes Peak in America? Well, with a twin-engine, four-wheel drive, turbo, Suzuki GTI, wild wings on the car, big monster Tajima. Did a marvellous job in that last year, held the outright record for about 20 minutes. He was upside down here a couple of years ago, got out, put the car back on its wheels and continued. In the nighttime stage, the lights looked a bit funny, about 2.5 metres off the ground, but he is a hard charger, and he and Greg Carr from Australia, former Australian champion on several occasions, are very close together, both of them, in Suzuki Swift GTIs. Now, up against him is number 21, the Petronas Eon Racing Team entry, Karamjit Singh from Malaysia, with Ron Teo, his co-driver, in a Proton Wira. Now, that's a Group N car, but it's four-wheel drive and turbo. And by comparison, Tajima is in a Group A car, non-turbo, 1.3 litres, so highly modified, but front-wheel drive only, and the smallest engine capacity car in the event. And have a look how hard Tajima will charge. Ross Runnels is the intrepid Australian navigator in with Monster Tajima. Marvellous bloke, gives it his all. And he really is a good runner. Now, he can't do anything magical and special on the bitumen. Wait till he gets to the dirt. Remember, front-wheel drive only, 1.3 litre non-turbo on the inside there, going to the right of screen, on the inside loop, by comparison with four-wheel drive and turbo, down here in the bottom of screen. And charging off goes Nobuhiro Tajima. And he is a hero too. He's a marvellous runner and a regular competitor in Telecom Rally Australia. Front-wheel drive just running him out a little bit wide, but he keeps on going, and he revs the head off this car, just about, leading, as you can see, as he comes down Riverside Drive, as he needs to be, if he's to be competitive, if he has to have a chance of beating the four-wheel drive turbo that he's matched against. But his real interest is Class A and the smallest engine capacity version of it, as the Proton Wira, number 21 of Singh, goes wide there, and Tajima heading under the tunnel and probably going to take second place, not to be as quick as the Proton, but it won't be for the lack of trying. Singh pressing on. Proton, a Malaysian copy of or development of the Mitsubishi Lancer GSR, and as you can see as they go down Riverside Drive, probably a couple of seconds behind is Nobuhiro Tajima in the little Suzuki on this stage last night. He and Greg Carr, running similar cars, did identical times, and they're running very similarly in the event.